All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of The Urban Gardener. I'm so glad you guys could join with me today for this episode. If you can, please hit the subscribe button right down below there and follow along with this episode and more adventures that we get going here as we get growing in the garden season. Today, we're out in our back alleyway fence line here where I've got my tomato row prepared out. Now, if you've seen videos from last year, we grow out a bunch of different types of really great tomatoes. We'll be planting those out here in our setup, but also if you notice, we've prepared the ground a little bit differently this year, and in between each of these buckets, what we're going to try to do is grow out some of our melons. So I've got a bunch of different melon starts and tomato starts for us to get this project going. Let's get growing. So in our one of our greenhouses here, we've got some melons growing. Got some watermelons there in the background, and right up here we've got ourselves some cantaloupes that look like they're doing really well. Plant those out in between our tomatoes. As you can see, we also got some other things in here that I'm trying to keep away from some of the slugs and bugs that are eating them. And we had a kale plant pop up in one of our melons there. So I'll have to find a place for that kale to grow. So don't give me too much of a hard time here, but as you can tell, my tomato starts, for one, are a little far behind, and they're not looking as well taken care of as they should be. So we're going to get them planted out into their pots, give them a bit more space for their roots, and they should grow up, catch up with the season. We should still get a pretty good harvest. Now our buckets here that we're going to be using to plant out our tomatoes, these are still empty, not filled at all. I wanted to show you that we use a nice big 3-inch hole down in the bottom of the bucket. Plenty of holes drilled around the bottom as well that are smaller for roots to get through, but that big 3-inch hole is to allow for the tomato taproot to be able to access the ground underneath. We set up a drip line watering system, which is actually a soaker line, which acts as a dripper for us. And that will drip into each of our buckets, allowing for water a couple of times a day as we have that set out on a timer. And as we plant out our melons, it'll also drip along the line as well there too, keeping everything nice and watered for us. Using these buckets here has just a couple advantages to me, in my opinion. I am able to put in my own soil for the main and feeder roots around the plant to be able to feed off of, and I can add the nutrients and everything right there, which obviously I can add nutrients and everything to the ground if I was to plant them in the ground. But where I'm growing here, there's a ton of bug pressure and weed pressure, snails and all of that sort of stuff. The weeds and everything else really seem to overgrow, and doesn't work too well for growing those plants in. And I found it's just a little bit nicer to get them up above things just a little bit more. And it also helps out with some of the blight as well, because when your plants are down closer to the ground like that, a lot of the diseases and things like that are able to just kind of wash themselves up into your plant as things start to rain or you're feeding water. So to me, it works really well to be able to use this bucket system for growing out our tomatoes. All right, so here we are out here. We've got our tomato starts here, and we've got our buckets all ready to go. Got some soil, and what we're gonna do, seeing how we're getting kind of a really good late start with our tomatoes, and they're still really small, So what we're going to do is we're going to plant them out in this bucket with soil planted in about halfway. So that'll allow for the plants to grow up and out of the bucket, and when they get so far up, what we'll do is we'll take off the lower leaves below the bucket line and fill it up to the top to allow for a really good strong stem and root system to form, so that we get ourselves some really, really good tomatoes later on in this season. So let's fill in some soil and plant out some of these tomato starts. You can see the soil line in this 5-gallon bucket. It's filled about halfway. So now that our bucket's filled, what we want to do, as with any plant start, you want to create a hole for your start to get in. Now in the hole here, I've got some of this dry organic fertilizer. Now this is a tomato-based organic fertilizer, so it's going to have the extra calciums and things like that that your tomato's going to really thrive with. We're just going to apply a tablespoon or two into the bottom of the hole there. Mix it in really well, get it down in there. Now, there's several other things that you could use as well to put into your hole. Some people like to add some Epsom salts. A really, really good one to recommend to use, it would be mycorrhizae, which would help with root growth. I just don't happen to have any at the moment for these. I'm sure that our tomato plants will grow really well. Tomato plants really, really do grow pretty well on their own without much fertilization, but if we want really good, strong fruits, you want to give them some good fertilizer. So we're going to take one of our plants here. It seems to be one of the only starts that came out of this one here, the delicious variety. We only had 3 seeds, and we were lucky enough to get one of them to germinate. So let's get that plant out of its bill here, gently massage it out. There, so it's kind of got pretty simple root system. The planting soil is really dry here, so we'll see our root system here. Set it in really nicely. Take the soil around it and bury it all the way up to those next leaves. Tamp it down gently, to not pack your soil too much. So there we go. So we've got that first tomato plant planted out in the bucket there. We do have plenty more tomato starts here to get planted out. As you can tell, plenty more buckets to plant them out in. We'll get that all taken care of, and when we're done with that, we'll talk about those melon starts. All right, so now that we're finished up with all of our tomatoes going down our tomato row there, we're going to go ahead and get started planting out our melons. So now I've got the melon starts out, but first off, right here at the very end of the row and the other end of the row, we're gonna plant out some pumpkin seeds that we saved from pumpkins we grew last year. We'll see how they do as we try a second year with our pumpkins. We'll directly seed those into the ends, as the plants will be very large plants and they can grow out the ends of our garden here, our back alleyway. So down here at the end of our garden here, we're gonna go ahead and plant out our pumpkin varieties. So I've got a few different seeds here that we'll do. We'll just put those down about an inch or so. We're going to plant out a few different seeds here in this spot to ensure that we get a really nice plant. When those starts come up, we'll cut off basically the ones that are weaker, and we'll keep the one good plant that's the strongest growing. So there we go. Get ourselves some nice seeds put in there. I kind of leave just a little divot there right where I've planted the seeds, so I can kind of tell where I'm going to be expecting some plants to come up. And then also, because of this being outside and out in my alleyway and everything, we're going to be dealing with a lot of bug pressure. When those start coming up, the slugs or whatever bugs are going to jump right on them, and they're going to go right after those plants. And that's going to take down our chances of success. So what I'm going to do here is I've got this plastic container. Should act like a small little greenhouse for these plants. What we'll do is we'll cover them up to keep them protected. So we've got all of our melon starts out here, placed out and ready to go to be planted out. I think the plan will be that we've got some cantaloupe here. We'll place some watermelon, cantaloupe, watermelon, do a couple of more cantaloupes, another watermelon, and then we'll end in the middle space there between the last space, which has our other pumpkins planted out. We'll put in another cantaloupe there. So all right here in our next space over from where we planted out those pumpkin seeds, we're going to start planting out our cantaloupe. Will be the first thing what we do, and then like I said, we'll work our way down. We'll plant out some watermelons and intermittently put in cantaloupes and watermelons down the line, and I'll show you all that after they're all done and finished. But let's plant out this one cantaloupe first. We've got 2 plant starts, a couple of weeds in there we can just go ahead and pull out. This is a Hale's Best cantaloupe. So what we'll do is we'll out our plants. Got a decent root system, work their way all the way down into the bottom there, and we're getting these plants just before the roots were starting to get bound in, which is a really good thing here with melons. What we'll do is we'll try to get these 2 split up just nice and easily there without disturbing the roots too much. I'm going to save the other plant for down at the other end, so we'll set that down in there gently. Set that aside. Now what we're going to need to do, dig out ourselves a nice hole here in the ground. Set our cantaloupe right in there. And with the melons here, I'm also kind of shaping out the ground around the base of the melons into a sort of bowl shape. That's to keep most of the moisture moving in towards the main roots of the plant that are here. The plant's going to send out vines as it goes, and then it'll probably send out some roots to find other spots along the way as it finds itself into different places growing along. But we'll make sure that the base of the plant gets plenty of water going right into the main root system. We've got this one all planted out. We'll get the rest of them all finished, and we'll go over our plants that we got here growing in the back alleyway. right, so we've got all of our melons all planted in. I did want to go over something with you real quick that we didn't talk about as far as the melons. We've got here a all-purpose dry organic fertilizer. This is an all-purpose fertilizer versus the tomato-based fertilizer that we used with the tomatoes earlier. What we did is we top dressed our plants, which we just basically mixed in some of this fertilizer into the top of the soil around the base of the plants, mixed that in, then we watered them up. And we've got all of our melons planted in down the row. Said we've intermixed watermelons and cantaloupe. More watermelons there. We did plant out 3 in our watermelon areas here and over there to basically see which one of those plants will be the strongest. We've got plenty of cantaloupe, so we've got those spaced out in between the others. And then of course, like I said, our other variety of pumpkins in our little greenhouse covering at the end there. So now let's see how this garden takes shape. So all right, we've got all of our plants all planted out here for today. Gonna be looking forward to those tomatoes popping up out of those buckets there, and in between them, some really great melons for us to look forward to as they get growing here this season. Summer's on its way, so we've got a lot to look forward to. I wanna ask you all real quick to hit the thumbs up button here for this video, and if you can, hit the subscribe button and follow along with more garden adventures here on the Urban Gardener. And don't forget, if you got any questions, comments, concerns, or anything at all, hit me up in the comments section below, and I'll see you all again on the very next episode. All set in and put. All right, so we got that first tomato plant, or no, not tomato plant. Still got that wind blowing really good. So down here on the very first end of the alleyway here, we're gonna go ahead and plant out one of our pumpkin varieties. All right. So all right, we got ourselves all okay. So all right, we've got all of our tomatoes planted out, and oh my gosh, tomatoes. We didn't want to talk about tomatoes, we want to say plants. Plants. Oh, and the wind's gonna kick in again. Oh, we can't win for nothing today. It's so simple because all I want to say is thank you. So let's try that just one more time. See what kind of outtakes we get today. Should be plenty.